take some time to research them, such as IFC and COBE. And then he also highlight the importance of communication between the team. So communication amongst the team as early as possible, as effectively as possible, is the key to making this all BIM process work. And strive for consistency and involve all parties, basically. Then we have Mr. Abi Sawan. He highlighted that we should remember the basic of what BIM is. So we should try to take BIM back to the basic. We should try to have the fundamentals to have a better BIM experience in a project. Because if you are in the know, if you are involved in BIM, something you do could be a little detached from other people. So it is important to try to see it from the basic, try to have the fundamentals so that maybe we'll have a better BIM experience in the future project. So through this series of webinars, our goal is to build awareness basically around the wide array of AEC practitioners on how BIM can leverage and can be beneficial to the FM practices. So with us tonight, we have Mr. Vaughn Harris, the founder and chief director in BIM Academy Africa. Mr. Vaughn Harris, AKA the Baron of BIM. I did a little digging in LinkedIn. He will be our first speaker. He has successfully established the BIM Academy Africa and is currently the sole provider of BIM training in South Africa. He has already trained and accredited over 1,500 professionals within the built environment industry, which is really impressive. Then our second speaker, we have Dr. Juliana Brahim, who is an associate professor in University Technology Mara, Malaysia. Dr. Juliana Brahim, who will be our second speaker, holds a PhD in construction management and has years of experience working for both in the academic sector as well as in the industry. Then we have Ms. Pasu Kaldamai, who is the CEO / BIM manager in BIMS Tallinn, Estonia. Ms. Pasu is the founder of BIMS, a consultancy for building information modeling in Tallinn, Estonia. And she has a prior experience leading the implementation of BIM. So welcome to all the speakers. Thank you for joining us. My name is Allysha Darwin, and I will be your host. I will currently work as a BIM-FM executive at Microcorp Sdn Bhd. We are a company who automate various FM activities through providing FM information system. Last but not least, we have I'd like to acknowledge the presence of our Managing Director, Mr. Muhammad Sharani. Welcome, sir. Before we start, I have a few kind of housekeeping items. Everyone is on mute, so if you have any questions for our speaker, please feel free to enter them into the chat section, and we will be addressing the questions at the very end of the session. Or you can also ask by raising your hand at the participant section. And we have this event running live in Microcorp Facebook, and we are also recording this, and a recorded version of all our webinars are available in our YouTube channel after the live session. So we will be allocating 15 to 20 minutes for each speaker to give their insights, and after that we will have 30 minutes of discussion. So we plan to finish by 10 to 10:30 p.m. So with that, I would like to turn this over to our first speaker, Mr. Vaughn Harris.
Thanks very much, Allysha. Should I just take control of my screen and share?
All right, yeah, I'll stop sharing.
Can you see my screen? Are you seeing me?
Yeah, I can see your screen.
I see your screen.
All right, super. All right, thanks very much. I think, as I understand from the time I have, 15 minutes, I'm going to try and squeeze a 20-minute presentation into 15 minutes. So it's almost, I've got a minute to win it with 20 slides. I've been watching this whole chasing the eye and the BIM thing, and I want to approach this session from a completely different approach than what I've been watching in the past series. I want to look at the eye rather from the point of looking at identity. Now, why I'm talking about this is in the past 4 months, I'd say I've been on more webinars in the last 4 months than I've been in the past 4 years. And I find it that it's so incredible that we're in an industry where we're now seeing more professionals than students that are scrambling around trying to get certifications on any courses or technology related issues. And many of them are still flashing their certificates around on LinkedIn, and they're proving that they've got the digital skills to embrace this whole new paradigm shift as we look at it. And we can all agree that we're sitting in an industry where it's full of stakeholders that are driving this sector to improve it and being more innovative. And we're facing some of the toughest challenges I think we've ever faced. And this whole pandemic has almost given us an opportunity to give us a reset button, not just with work, but we've seen it in our lifestyles too. And if we look at the eye rather from an identity point of view, I think if I'd start with looking at asking the listeners if they've heard this word, this freedom paradox. And we know freedom paradox is the freedom of life, of living in terms of complete freedom. And I think we can all agree in the last 6 months, that's been completely taken away from us. And like BIM, BIM hasn't just crept into our lives without warning. We've had it for over a decade now. Yet COVID-19 has been a complete disruptor beyond any proportion that we've been able to manage or deal with in such a short period of time. And yet this impact of the virus, we've actually learned to live with it. We've been forced to live with it. And you either adapt or you die. Yet in this tremendous growth of the digital built environment, it's created opportunities for companies to be able to engage on projects across these international frontiers. And with this increasing complexity and demand for this higher design delivery that we're seeing there's a different way that management of construction resources does not need necessarily to depend upon a professional certification, but needs to more understand what we call the integration of technology and process, and most important, people. And I think with all the skills we have at the moment, people are the most important aspect. What I really enjoyed about the first session of Chasing the Eye in BIM is listening to Mr. Collins, who gave the listeners a very good understanding of the integrated delivery method, digital delivery method. And he also mentioned the skills that we currently need that need to play within this industry. And most importantly, the challenges that we're facing going forward. Yet he spoke about the processes, which we know only makes up 10% of BIM. And the second session we heard, we listened to the one particular speaker. It was Gavin Crump from Aussie BIM Guru. And I think he showed us a real eye-opening example of the powerful technology that's being used within the digital built environment. And I think he certainly raised the bar to how technology should be used within these design delivery projects. Yet we know that technology only forms 10% of the whole BIM process. And I want to speak more about today about the people, because I think many of us are missing this point on the people side of BIM. Each year, we get thousands of graduates that are wearing fancy robes and walking across stages and are accepting their university or their college degrees. And many of them are seeing now doctorates even with BIM. And then based on that dedicated hard work, as well as their emotional breakdowns and tuition fees, They're not as fortunate as other students, unfortunate students who have not been able to get that university degree. Yet now we're seeing them having the opportunity to do more online style classroom and being access to copious amounts of technology training. And there's nothing wrong with that. Remember, in my opinion, I feel that education in BIM does not need to start with a specialist degree, or even for that matter, software training skills. And I think countless studies have shown us that if we teach the principles to open the learners' minds to approach and evolve a curriculum that demonstrates progression, then we can take that from academia into the workplace with more defined aspirations that show a route to a successful or a worthwhile career or occupation. Yet we're suddenly seeing all these laggards that are out there, suddenly scrambling around, trying to become more BIM savvy, and the fear that maybe they're losing their jobs or they've lost their job and they're trying to find a new one, and all they're doing is trying to get software training. Yet the truth, I think, at times is that we need to stop and ask ourselves, is this BIM thing that we're doing making us better professionals, or is it actually just strengthening your identity or your status? I think every individual out there should be challenged by being an asset towards a team rather than trying to be a producer of work that is predetermined or defined by, let's say, time or expectation. And I think these conversations that we're having now need to be in a new space with a new conversation. And almost, I can say, it's BIM without an identity. And what I mean by that is, if you look at, we understand the professional roles around quantity surveyors and architects and engineers. We know those are professional roles. But we're playing a new game where we're seeing the skills of different experts coming into the field. And we keep continuously hearing about the BIM manager, the BIM consultant, the BIM lead, the interior BIM managers. These are roles that are just as important as the architects and the engineers. Yet there's an identity crisis with this. And this whole identity crisis that I'm talking about is looking at the different fields of education, certification, soft skills, leadership skills, and assimilating that information. And I all too often hear the groans and the shouts, sometimes even on webinars when people haven't put their mics on mute. But I've been on the front line, and I've spoken to the senior executives. I've spoken to HR departments, and I keep hearing the same message. It says, my staff are well BIM trained. We are BIM compliant. We are BIM ready. We've got all the CPD training. Yet most of those teams go back into what I call autopilot phase, or they go back to their classrooms where they assimilate just the information that's important to them. And they got a few useful tricks, and they filed the rest as a nice to know. And I think a naturally conservative business environment coupled with often traditional workflows, as well as I like to call them an ignorant, heavy IT department that makes decisions to introduce new technologies very daunting. And I think it's imperative that we start to identify these roles and responsibilities better as companies, and managing the staff and team and members that are involved with this whole digital transformation. If we're wanting our professionals to reinvent themselves, they have to look at a new approach, an ethos that affects the experience of the customer. Putting the client first is great, but we also need to immerse ourselves into this interactive experience that takes us out of the headspace of business and puts us into the focus of the headspace of the client, and to actually understand what the output of the client is required, not just what their job is. This whole progression of progressive curriculum, and the UK are already starting to identify and show us that it starts as young as the school-going children. That it needs to be, I think we also probably need to be more cognizant of the fact that there's a key issue, that we're lacking digital leadership. We've got all the rookies coming out of school, colleges, we've got the technical experts, yet we need to attract people with digital leadership skills. And that's lacking regardless of if you're in a developed country or a developing country. And this movement of skills and passion and contribution will help us obviously drive a better digital built environment to this next phase of development. And then hopefully we can move to an advanced digital economy, which has an inclusive society. I think the point that I'm also trying to get to is that many people don't see BIM as a journey. They see it as a race. It's almost like a sprint, that entering this digital transformation phase is the fear of the unknown. So if I get certification, that will help me get to the next level. And this BIM thing that we keep talking about, I asked the question, who's riding this wave of opportunity? And many might disagree with me that I think BIM education does not start with the client. And for matter, it doesn't start with the architect. It starts with the individual, and that he's going to be part of a team. We cannot expect clients to take this ownership and drive demand of assets without being prepared ourselves. And if technology is often the common root of cause to misunderstanding of BIM, yet this is also driven by the ignorance of the fact that we have senior management in positions who have failed to recognize the importance of the BIM lifecycle as opposed to being just looking at technology training. And while this mere presence of the term acronym exists within our day-to-day lives, I think we're seeing this transformation of technology into the digital built environment as almost as a sign of poor traditional literacy. Now, it's also, we speak about this vital, better collaboration because we have the technology that will help us understand the better design process. And for me, I think the hardest pill to swallow about this whole thing during my journey or experience with BIM is that I think many will still agree that BIM is only in the adoption of major design users. And unfortunately, that puts a lot of us behind the curve. If we look at the architect's job is absolutely fundamental to the design process. And sometimes he coordinates the projects, and keep in mind, he may even manage the project as the principal agent. Yet BIM is not all about him. It's not all about the design. It's not merely just a 3D graphic representation, but it's a virtual module that is designed to evaluate the construction and the performance of the built asset. And people forget that. And I think if it's properly implemented with the right team, we can always provide these higher quality and more safe environments to work in, where the team is working together and not just focusing on the BIM aspect of this. We still need that technical know-how. And those technical know-how requires software requirements, software exchange formats, and understanding that. Yet what a lot of people don't understand in this industry is that it's critical to understand the other professionals, that what their software requirements are. And it's not just only about the basic digital skills and how information needs to be, or data needs to be transferred to other relevant professionals. With all this sort of insight, we can gain these critical skills to rather judge digital content and ensure that different team members protect themselves when using different software applications. And I think this is sometimes overlooked. I love this picture, if you can see it, where they say a picture tells 1,000 words. Teaching kids, I've always said, is, are we raising children or are we raising adults? And I'm a big fan of homeschooling. I think it's a fantastic idea. And I think for many, it's been a wake-up call in the last 6 months for many around the world. But teaching kids is far easier to motivate the children than it is an adult. And this crisis, I think, has taught a lot of parents in a very short period of time the importance of learning and how difficult it is. And we adopt the same process within professionals, that if you go back to the saying, teach me and I will forget. Show me and I may remember. And involve me and I will learn. I'll give you a good example. There's a picture of my 2 kids. Love them to bits, and I'm going to share it with you. But get good intentions, wrong application. Now, we sit in an industry where, given the motivation and the opportunity, we're all striving with good intentions, but all too often we're doing so and applying the incorrect applications. And due to the lack of understanding and education. And the problem with this in our industry is that it often leaves a trail of untold sufferings and the aftermath that we have to go back and clean up. And these lessons are not being shared across the industry. And this changes the way we think about things. Giving someone an application doesn't mean they're going to use it correctly and they're going to use it in the wrong environment, as I like to show what's happened here. Fortunately, that's not permanent marker that you see. Yet, if we look at us as professionals, are we raising profiles or are we raising professionals? What I mean by this, it's great to have a great LinkedIn profile or an identity, but it requires more of a concerted, committed effort from everyone in the industry to concentrate not just on the technology application, but look at the insights, look at the entire understanding of that whole BIM lifecycle. And if we get that right, we can start focusing on the issues that we do face every day, which is persistent siloing across industries, failure of collaboration with suppliers, the traditional contractor methods that still exist across first world countries, the difficulties that recruitment agencies are having to find the right talented workforce. And then there's this insufficient knowledge and lessons learned that we're not passing on to the next generation to get it done. I've always gone by the word grit, because I think if you want an identity, you need grit. And this whole thing about grit is about stamina, passion, ceaseless energy. A lot of people say, I've got that passion because of what I have to go through on a day-to-day. Sometimes I feel like Mother Teresa. Yet, remember, working every day as hard as you can, learning along the way, and teaching others is just as important as showing your own identity. Talent makes you great, we know that. Yet getting these achievements and awards and self-recognitions and putting them on LinkedIn and showing your profile doesn't necessarily often let someone succeed beyond that point. Building a growth mindset is something we're missing. As I said earlier, children fail, but they don't see failure as a permanent position. When adults fail, we learn to be more resistant, and we don't take failure very well in our lives. And I think we can learn that this building a growth mindset, allowing ourselves to fail, is only allowing us to go forward and move forward. And I always love this picture about the world's greatest surfer in Portugal. Yet it requires passion and perseverance from an industry. And it also requires us to have a professional identity. And that professional identity requires everything from learning, mentoring, and practice. If we can't share that across our skills, how are we expected to consult other professionals on the projects and show that reflection and self-study? It's something we're missing. And many professionals, I think, keep their distance from colleagues. And I think it might be for the reason that they cite, that they can't understand the complicated workflows that are out of their reach or understanding. And those allow them to remain blinkered for diverging opinions or new approaches to projects. And this whole thing is probably a handy face mask, excuse the pun. But behind that are the growing skills of an industry that we are really missing. And it's being held back because of traditionalism. And creating this effective team that I keep trying to find out is so important. And I think our biggest hurdles to overcome is wanting to introduce digital transformation in an environment where sometimes we feel there's no progress with change. It can affect everyone on the team. And in fact, the biggest shakeup is affecting the culture of people and the way people think, the way they plan, the way their relationship works with technology. That's missed. And I think making this positive experience with employees is something that every company is missing. Along my 29 years of working within this industry, I've always liked to sum up 4 beauties, and I'm going to share them with you today because that's how I'm going to finish with you today. But the 4 beauties I'm going to share with you is something I've identified. I call them DBs, and these DBs exist in every industry. They're excuse my French, but they're the digital bullshitters. And these guys, remember, people are naturally political creatures, and they'll do whatever it takes to protect their own interests as well as their careers. Okay, everyone works with them. And this includes everything from leveraging the power of dynamics within the project team to get what you want. And as a rule, people manage themselves if you let them, but I can guarantee you that you'll always meet one or the four that I'm going to share with you, that they hide in your design teams, your quantity surveying departments, and sometimes almost in your IT departments. But the problem with individualism is that we're underpinning culture and industry traditionalism. And this is something we'll never really get to understand unless you involve the whole team. I think it always reminds me of that movie, we spoke about movies just now on Netflix, but it reminds me of that movie in Monty Python, Life of Brian, when he says, yes, we're all individuals. So in my life alone, I'm trying to rectify this by advocating the world. There's more to be more cooperative and more sustainable and more focused on collective actions rather than the glorification of individuals. And that's exactly the problem with this industry. We're all looking for glorification as individuals in our industry. And the guy that stands out at the top for me, I'm going to share them with you, is Teflon Ron. Nothing sticks to this guy, all right? Not even the virus. And invariably, he manages to stay clear of everything responsible in the digital environment. And it becomes anything that's complex and challenging, right, cannot add value. And he slips away effortlessly without any accountability. And he's always first out the door given the opportunity. But he's always right next to this guy, Harry the Hustler. And Harry's always part of the team. He's always there. He's always busy. He's probably listening to this webinar right now. Yet during this digital transformation, he's the only one who's not doing any solid work. And he always requires the attention to add value, but he always seems to be busier than everyone else, but he's not really doing anything, right? And then you get this Lucy the loafer. No offense to a woman on this. But Lucy's the willy one. She's quickly identifying the best tech people around her in the office. Her office is right next door to the HR. And she's an island of incompetence in a sea of competence. And she knows exactly how to exploit those resources on those projects. And then obviously you get your last person, who's Peggy the parasite. And Peggy is the exhausting one. She's your really expensive resource. She's always there trying out different software, making sure that we have the best software on the team, the additional digital, hiring the right experts. And it's never enough for them. They're always expecting the best, and they always understand the lousy tools, and they're always quick to criticize those tools. In fact, she's the highly insecure one that's prepared to be sucking all the organizational or even emotional resources to hide that vague idea what BIM is. And I'm going to end there because I can go on with another 35 different beauties in this industry, the DBs as I call it. But these are the type of people that have cultures, and there's nothing wrong with these people. They add value to our teams. And without that, we can't move forward in an industry. And this is why I always say, you know, BIM is not an art, it's a science. And they say BIM is collaborative, but I prefer to rather look at this word, as we say, BIM is more of a connected state. For collaboration to be effective, it needs to be governed by a shared or agreed ways of working. And this is where standards come in. This is where collaborative BIM practice is at its best. Standards provide what we call a shared understanding that needs to happen, and when it happens, and now, and how it's going to happen. And if they are applied correctly within the design team, as well as the contractor, you know, these new enhanced features of technology will change our lifestyle preferences. And if it's possible to achieve that in a project team with connectivity, that will always succeed. Yet, remember, projects succeed or fail on the back of your team. And it's therefore vital that we maintain this team satisfaction, right? The top brass may be at ease with the fact of making decisions that benefit himself as a company. But as a BIM leader or a BIM manager, you are challenged by the traditional work methods and promoting new digital processes, which just makes it so much harder. And I'm going to close off there by a quote from Bruce Lee, and that is, absorb what is useful, discard what is useless, but apply your mind to the skill that you have, right? And if we do that within our learning capacity as digital entrepreneurs, professionals. We can do all of this within our professional capacity while still applying your technological skill set. And that's what exceptional BIM is all about for us. It's to simulate an experience within a traditional working environment and translate that into a digital project environment while trying to keep these real project aspirations and provide exposure to alternative BIM usage across different disciplines. That's what makes this whole gamified way of working exceptional. Become a BIM ninja. Be a BIM warrior. If it means the BIM samurai or a BIM Bashiru, if you want to call him, be different, be exceptional, guys. And I'm going to stop there because I really get excited now, and you've only given me 25 or 15 minutes. So I'm going to have to park my brakes then. If you want to see what exceptional BIM is all about or ask questions later, feel free to visit the site or connect with me on LinkedIn. And I did 28 minutes. I am sorry, I took over my time, but I hope the listeners are.
Great. Thank you so much, Mr. Harris. We wish to hear more from you, really. So yeah, I like how you focus more on the people aspect, acknowledging that the people aspect is actually the key issue here, right? All the time, we usually try to focus more on the process, on the technology side. So yeah, thank you so much for emphasizing on that. So now I'd like to invite our second speaker, Dr. Juliana Ibrahim. Over to you, Doctor.
Okay, Assalamualaikum and good evening, and thank you very much to our host, Ms. Allysha and Mr. Sharain, and thank you again for inviting me. So I will like to share my screen first. Okay, I hope you can see the screen. Okay, so again, I am a lecturer from UITM Shah Alam, and I would like to share the concept of I in BIM from the academic and researcher perspective. So previously, we have seen that our guest speaker from the previous webinar defined the I for in BIM is for the information in BIM. But what I can see here, we can see two different perspectives of I in BIM, which are the information itself, information that we need in order to implement BIM. And the second I is the intelligence in terms of the processes, in terms of the people involved, and also in terms of the technology that involved for BIM project. So I would like to go back to the history of BIM, because I still remember when I started my PhD, my research back in 2013, it was very difficult for me to understand about BIM concept because I never have experience involved in BIM project. So the more I read, the more I get confused, because we know that there is no specific or standard of BIM definition. Even researchers will define BIMs into different perspectives. So what I did last time is I need to review, or I need to know the history of BIM concept. Why BIM terms emerge in the industry? Who initiate the concept? Why and when? And also how referring to the process. So then this is my findings during my study. The first publication that I made during my PhD in order to understand about BIM is about history of BIM term. So as we can see that BIM started with the first terms, which is BDS, Building Description System, in 1975, and then we have Glide, and then we have CABD in 1983, Building Product Model 1988, and then we have GBM, and then in 1996 we have the terms of BIM. So how and what element that represent this concept So we can relate with the terms or with the elements of I, which is information and intelligence of the concept. So we can see here is the evolution and expansion of information from this different concept. For example, we can see here for BDS. So BDS, the information, they just focus on the design perspective. And then we have glide, we have additional of quantity takeoff. And then we have CABD with the addition of construction method, CABD and BPM. And also another one is GBM. And then with BIM, so the information has covered from pre-construction phase until up to post-construction phase. So we can see the evolution of information, the expansion of information for these different terms, and also the intelligence in terms of the processes, in terms of the technology, and also people that involved in order to deliver these different terms in construction industry. Then after that, I also review few definition of BIM starting 1996 and up to 2017. So from this, because this was during my research at that time, so I have identified about 5 different perspectives that represent BIM definition. So we have researcher define BIM into design, and then we have a process, we have a technology, performance, and also productivity. And with these whole different terminologies of BIM, so we can see that the information and also the intelligence in BIM has progressively expanded and improved in terms of to cover the process, even the use and contents of the contract. Because I always remember one of the main elements that mentioned by Mr. Sharon last time, contract is the most important in project. When we want to do a BIM in project, we always refer to the contract about the information, what kind of BIM that we want to implement, who will be responsible to deliver the BIM, and what kind of information that need to be delivered. Because from my research, I can see that most of BIM project in Malaysia lack in terms of the information in the contract. For example, the contract did not state clearly about the BIM users. For example, BIM for FM. What kind of FM? What kind of information that need to be there in order to deliver the success of BIM? So basically, these are the findings that we can see, and I do believe after 2017 until to date, we have a new perspective to cover the BIM definition. And then this is just a sharing for my study last time. Okay, at that time, I tried to come up with the current process of BIM that cover from pre until post-construction phase. But because of the limitation of data at that time, we don't have a specific project or single project that implement BIM from pre-construction until post-construction phase. Most of the implementation of BIM only cover at certain phase. For example, pre-construction phase only, or construction phase, or for FM, which is post-construction phase only. Depends on the requirement of the client and also the capability of our construction players at that time. But for here, this is the process that cover for pre-construction phase. So for this one, we can see the elements of information, which is DI, information, and also the intelligence of the process, technology, and also people. And for this one, we can see that because in conventional project, we understand that the design consultant, for example, they develop the design in isolated way without referring to other design consultant. For example, architect did not referring or did not coordinate their work with CNS engineer or MLP. So what happened is the design produced consists with clashes. But for this current process, what I can see here from our findings is there is an integrated of work, collaboration of work, among construction players, different construction players at the early phase. So based on the process, I can see they have successfully delivered BIM concept for the purpose to produce the design with free clashes. And then, of course, we can see here the process. There is the innovation of process compared to the conventional, and also the use of new technology compared to conventional. And then for this one is a process that cover at construction phase only. At this time, they try to implement BIM, which is after the contractor has been awarded by the client. However, at that time, the construction has already taken place, and they're unable to fully utilize the BIM at that time. So the implementation of BIM at this time is more to trial project or as a pilot to test to implement BIM at this construction phase. And for this one, we can see the new involvement of players, which is a BIM consultant, because there is a limitation in terms of skill of construction players to implement BIM. So normally there will be a BIM related designation, such as BIM manager, BIM consultant or BIM coordinator for the purpose to assist this implementation. Okay, and then for this one, is a process that cover for post-construction phase. The data that I have for this at this time is most of the project that use BIM for FM being implemented when the building has been completed already. The building has been constructed using conventional method, which is without BIM, and then the client requests to use BIM for the purpose of FM. So we can see also the involvement of facility managers and also BIM consultant, where they convert the 2D as-built drawing to 3D as-built drawing. However, some of the issue is when they convert the 2D as-built to 3D as-built, they detect the clashes, because during the construction phase, the contractor or the design consultant did not update the 2D design. So FM, facility manager or BIM consultant need to amend the 3D aspect of it so that they can add the information, which is DI, the information needed for the purpose of maintenance. So this is what I get for the my research last time. And then from the process, from the current implementation of BIM in Malaysia, so these are the common main issue that happens, which are people, process, policy, and technology. And for this one, this is not the these are not the new issues that happen, such as there is still a lack of understanding of BIM. Most of construction players still presume BIM as the use of software, or it is just a process to convert 2D to 3D without going the right process, without having the right information and coordination of work with different players. And then BIM expertise, and for the contract, I have experienced this because I managed to get involved with one project in BIM. So this project required to do BIM for FM, but the contract did not specify clearly what kind of FM that they want. So all the project team, even the client, they did not really know what they want for BIM, what kind of BIM that they want for that project. So at the end, yes, they have the 3D as-built drawing, a 3D as-built model, but they unable to fully utilize the model for the purpose of maintenance. So it is just a waste of time and money for that project. And then for process, because everyone have their own process, and for example, for the process that I've shown, BIM started when construction took place, or it is very hard to get the benefit because the design team and BIM consultant, for example, they try to implement BIM, whereas there is a progress at site. So their work or the work at site did not coordinate with the implementation of BIM. And then design consultant work separately because there is the absence of collaboration and they not coordinated their work collaboratively. And then for technology cost, I tend to disagree with the cost because I think BIM is not costly if you know the right process, the right people to help the implementation. And then for losing of project information because of compatibility of the different software. And I am very keen to this issue, BIM expertise. Same with Mr. Vaughan, you mentioned about the issues related to people. And yes, BIM expertise is part of the people issue because from my experience, most of the BIM project in Malaysia having problem because of this issue, BIM expertise. Anyone can claim themselves as a BIM expertise without knowing the right process, the right information, and the right time to implement BIM. So based on this issue, I have proposed to develop a model that specifically to assist construction players to implement BIM. And for that, I used a concept of maturity as a reference for my model. And from 2007 until 2015, so these are the models that use maturity that relate with BIM. And however, some of these models have limitation because some of the model focus on tools, which is the use of hardware and software. And we some of these model also focus on specific BIM users. For example, the most common 5 BIM users. And then some of the model did not have the assessment. If we want to improve ourselves, we need to know our current maturity level. Only then we can improve our performance in BIM. So for that reason, I have come up with this tool, which is migration path model BIM or BIM for construction professional. So for this model, I have highlight 5 maturity level, starting from level 1, which is the lowest maturity, and the highest is the level 5, expand BIM implementation. And each of this level consists of 3 elements, BIM work contract, BIM work process, and BIM technology. And each of these elements also consists of activities that need to be fulfilled by players. For example, we want to measure whether this person really aware of BIM or not. So we can evaluate that construction players by using assessment in each of the level. I have come up with a score, and if the construction players achieve the score at least 61 and above, so we can say that the players has matured enough in that maturity level. And for a score 41 and above, we can say that is a highly matured in that level. So construction players need to achieve maturity from level 1, which is BIM awareness, level 2, develop BIM strategy, level 3, implement, level 4, monitor BIM implementation, and level 5, which is the highest or the matured, is expand BIM implementation. So, okay, the way forward, what we are currently do now at UITM is we try to engage with the industry. I like to use the words from Mr. Vaughan just now, is mentoring and learning. So I do believe that mentoring is the effective way for us, especially for academician and researcher, in order to understand the current practices and the current problem faced by the industry. That's why for this, our current research that we are currently do now, we try to link with the industry to produce a tool that could identify criteria needed for players in order to implement BIM. And at the same time, the tools could be used to highlight the score and also certify and accredit whether this person or this organization is competent enough to do BIM. So, and this tool, we propose to the, we in the process to propose the tools to the relevant authorities. How we do this is by linkage with the industry. So before this, what we do is we propose this research, and the industry, the relevant industry that we want to collaborate, we ask what are the requirements and needs that need to be integrated to our research, so that at the end of our research, or the output of our research could be utilized and benefit to the industry. Because I still remember the first question in the first webinar, that question being asked to the Dr. Tamizi, why there is a difference between the current practices of being in the industry and current research that been done by academician and researcher. I think that one because of the lack of collaboration and linkage with the industry. So for that, we want to change the our process in doing research. So before this, we just get the industry, for example, or the private or the relevant authorities, they just involve during the data collection. But now we want the relevant authorities or the industry get involved with our research at the early stage, which is during the making of finalizing the proposal. So that during the process, we will have a review, progress review by the industry and also academician, so that what we can ensure that what we do is in line with the need of industry. So hopefully we can see the outcome, then our research can be utilized by the industry. And then this is what initiative by UiTM that currently being done. We are in a process to get a benchmark for our syllabus and subject related to BIM. Because before this, we have a problem in terms of contents, because they're more focusing on the tools instead of DI in BIM. So now we bring forward DI, which is the concept, the information of BIM, then we introduce the tools of technology. And then for industry training, as an academician, as a researcher, we still need to engage with the industry. And we can do by formal, which is by applying the industrial training, and by informal, which is we try to get involved in BIM project during the collaboration with the industry. And from this sharing session, I do believe that in order to understand BIM, especially for students, undergraduate or postgraduate student, we need to go back to the basic. Like previous webinar, Mr. Abisawan, if I'm not mistaken, we need to go back to the basic of BIM concept. What does it mean by BIM? Because even for master students in our faculty, when we ask about BIM, I think I can say that it's about 60% of them define BIM into 3D model only, or converting 2D or to 3D. That student are from industrial, not a fresh graduate student. So that's what we need to revise, or we need to revise the content, we need to revise how we teach our students. But at the same time, we strongly need collaboration and also involvement from the industry, the private, also public sectors. I think that's all from my sharing session from academic perspective for me. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Doctor. I agree that most contract does not clearly what information are required for BIM and FM. Yeah, so yeah, as an owner to be visionary, right? To know what do want for the long run, to really specify what kind of information are required on the contract.
Yes.
So thank you, Dr. Juliana. All right, Mrs. Kaldamai, I think we're ready for you.
You can unmute you.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep. Very clear.
Yeah.
Can you see my screen now?
I think Dr. Juliana has to stop sharing first. Okay. Yeah, I can see.
Is it okay now?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank you for inviting me to participate in this webinar, the I in BIM. I'm very happy to see that we are talking about this kind of subjects. My name is Pääsu Kaldamäe. I'm from BIM-est, company from Estonia. I've been working in the BIM field for 7 years. I was a BIM manager in one Canadian company. After that, I returned to Estonia and started my own consultancy. In our consultancy, we offer a quite wide range of BIM services. And our clients are mostly Estonian architectural and engineering companies. But also we have partners in Northern Europe, Norway, Sweden, Finland. We work mostly in public facilities, like hospitals and educational buildings, and also high performance mission critical buildings like data centers. We work now mostly in planning and design phase, preliminary design and detailed design phase. So today also I focus most of my presentation on that and information in this part. But our areas of expertise are BIM management and coordination, where we implement BIM modeling standards, protocols, and make execution plans. So when I talk about I in BIM, I will talk about information requirements, data requirements, but also quite a lot about communication inside the team. Little background of Estonia. Estonia is a very small Northern European country. Because it's so small, we are very proud of it. We have only 1.3 million inhabitants, and that also infects our construction market. So enterprises are very small. There are mostly small enterprises that usually concentrate only on one discipline. Some of them have been using BIM for quite a long time, but just for their own needs or inside their disciplines, like architects and structural engineers. So integrating all design disciplines together needs support from BIM management. Also, the BIM quality in Estonia varies. So some of our partners are very new to the softwares, and also when it comes to data requirements. But Estonia is known for its IT technology and implementing technologies fast. And we have quite good support from universities with their BIM lectures and research. So a young BIM generation is evolving fast. And there's a great strong push from the government side. We have a Riigi Kinnisvara, that's ERKAS, who is a real estate development and management company. And it was established for the efficient management of state real estate. This company is 100% owned by Republic of Estonia, and their general practice for their procurements and the projects is to use BIM. So that's really great because the goal for them is better quality of construction projects. They are doing quantity analysis from the models. We get a better quality from clash detection early on. There's better communication through the BIM models, PCFs, and they are starting to use the data in facility management. Background, 2008, they adopted the COBIM, that's a Finnish standard that's used in Northern Europe. And after that, they did their own ERCAS BIM requirements with more emphasis on data information. So this year, the newest BIM requirements were released, and the purpose of this document is to define the data content requirements for different design elements at different design stages. The level of data during different design stages is different, and the levels are based on EFC data model classes. Here you can see one data requirement page, for example, for interior finish. You can see that the different levels, these are in Estonians, but it's like preliminary phase and detail phase, then as-built and so on. They are different. And the second, there's parameters that are needed. And so architects and engineers from the early on, they know what kind of information they have to put in into the project. So the quality of model-based communication improves, and the level of reliability of the model will be clearer. And thanks to that, the client can trust a certain information in this, some stages of the life cycle. Here we can see the second example for the Windows doors. So the parameters that are needed, this list is quite long and specific. It's our job as BIM coordinators to check if the information is in the BIM model, and also support engineers and architects to get this model from their softwares to EFC. So here we can see one project that after they inserted their information to their project, it will come out in the most EFC softwares that read EFC files. So state-owned ERCAS can also see this in their facility management, open up the EFC files and see what kind of windows or coverings we have in the model, and check the information from the BIM models. So, and what happens if we see that this information isn't right during the design phase? Then we, I can show you also the information flow. It's quite classical. The modeler uploads a BIM model to common data environment. Then the data is sent to the system by EFC. BIM-based model checks are executed. These are predefined checks that we run on the BIM models, and the results are stored. And the specific checks that will be executed depends on the phase of the project. After that, automated check results are inspected by BIM coordinator, and he or she scans over the results. Then geometrical and data information will be validated. If you see something is wrong or isn't according to the requirements, we add issues to BIM Collab. BIM Collab is cloud-based BIM platform that we use. It's integrated BIM issue management for high quality BIM data and smooth information flow. When the input data was in EFC, the output is in PCF. So the data flows between the parties, but BIM Collab as a cloud platform just helps us to move it faster. After that, the modeler has the overview of the check results, and the entire project team is able to view all the project-related models and look up issues to discuss, evaluate, and approve. Also, architects and engineers can add their own issues or remarks to the BIM Collab software. So that's for the speed of cooperation, why Modeler is fully integrated in the communication process of the issues. After that, Modeler adjusts the BIM model and applies changes, and the process repeats until requirements are approved. Of course, everything is not in cloud, and we still have design review meetings where we discuss issues that need input from several parties. But most of them are through Zoom, so we try as much as possible to be efficient with our time and use the softwares that benefit that. Also, communication goes through platforms like Flip or Skype. Actually, Skype was invented in Estonia. And we use Asana for project management. So information doesn't get lost in the burden of emails, and the information is stored. Actually, COVID, when we also were in lockdown, during that time, our work as BIM management consultancy didn't change much. We used to work quite the same. So that shows us our processes were ready for this kind of digital workflow. But using BIM Collab, we can see the benefit in communication information. The information flows much faster and its communication is more productive. The team has always the latest informations, and we as a BIM manager have a better overview. We can see the different graphs and how things evolve. For us, it's important that the all information about the issues is in the cloud and it's shared with the team, so we can work better together. This was my short presentation. I want to thank you and invite you to connect in LinkedIn, or you can send me an email just for chat about BIM, or if you have any ideas for collaboration. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Pasu. So, do you have anything else to add, Mr. Shari?
No, I think I have a sort of different perspective tonight. So I think go ahead, Allysha. You are the host tonight. I'm the participant.
All right. So I think we will go ahead and take some time for questions now.
Yeah.
So yeah, to all the participants, just a reminder, please be sure to type your questions into the chat box, or you can ask directly by unmuting your microphone.
I like the idea about Ron mentioning about the people, because currently we are actually in the mode of improvising the people activity on the understanding not just about the BIM, but because we are delivering the model to facility management people. So we need to make sure the SM people ready to accept that model, and how can they make use that models on their day-to-day activities. This is what we are currently do, and we together with Sola, and we have also Mr. Malik and Allysha, we are documenting the lesson learned and the issues that we're facing when we convert this model for FMs. Even though we have been doing this for almost 15 years, from multiple projects, from the project that after construction, for the project that during construction, and for the renovation of the building that has a model. And currently we are doing it for a bus station, a big bus station, whereby their project is not in BIM, but we offer them, you want to do in BIM. Because we found it that because we need to take this information, it's much faster, even though they are not budgeting the project in BIM. We said to them, it's okay, we build up your model in BIM, perhaps we don't do it for BIM for construction, but we give back the result to them, all the clashes reports. We take their 2D drawing from all their consultants, and then we do back the BIMs, and we give them the clashes, they can rectify it, you know. And this is what we did now, and we are almost complete the project, even though they are not budgeted for BIM, because we want to make sure, we want to make our life easier when we take the information. So we offer them, we do it in BIM. So we cut short the process, I mean the activity to create the facility management information. I think it's almost 3 months. So we cut short their process. Otherwise, we need to spend like 6 months to deal with them. We cut short it to 3 months. We save time. Even though we need to spend different people, like we need to spend our BIM modeler people, but we save time tremendously, and we get the information, I don't say automatic, but it's digital. So this is what, that's why we are actually, I also together with you, Bon, is we passionate about how we convert the BIM to FM. So what we are now documenting the issues of the people on the FM perspective. So we have that now, and we plan to publish it, you know, as a report. And then we also work collaboratively together with the Construction Industry Development Board. I think in South Africa, they also call CIDB. So it's like a similar names. So we are going to also produce that report, so then they can collaborate with Juliana, you know, to like, you know, to tune the industry. So then they can have like, okay, we tune it to the BIM modeler, but what happened to the FMs? What happened to the clients, you know? Because perhaps, you know, they want to benefit back whatever they paid, you know. They paid the money to have the information. Now they want to use the information. So this is what we are currently do. So I think it's good if maybe I plan to have more time with you on to discuss. Maybe we can have another session in future. We host a session for people in Malaysia or in South Africa. We can have that short event like this, and Dr. Jo, and also Pasu, maybe we can also have collaboration again on this. We have better time, more time to discuss about it. Okay, sorry, Allysha, interrupting your event.
No, it's all right. Also, based on Ms. Pasu's presentation, it's very interesting. Since you store everything in cloud, I imagine from home isn't an issue anymore, even when you're dealing with all these big, huge Revit files, BIM files.
Sorry, can you repeat the question? I didn't hear it.
No,
The middle part.
I was saying, since you store everything in cloud, I think now most people are working from home, right? Or previous months, I guess. So it
Yeah.
wouldn't be an issue anymore, even when you're dealing with huge files in BIM.
I'd say no. We use quite a lot of Dropbox for storing our files. And there's, for example, if we take architectural engineering softwares like Revit, they have their own possibilities for cloud-based file sharing and central file sharing. So for us, this isn't a problem. And our company, our coordinators are used to working from home. So we just meet our design teams in their offices, but BIM-FM as a company works from their home offices.
How is the speed of internet in Estonia? I believe they must be very fast because I think you are one of the Skype developers, so you own Dropbox.
Yeah, I'd say it's okay. Yeah, but I don't know. Maybe the internet in your part of the world is even faster. But Estonia is like 99.9% covered with the internet, so I can be in internet in every part of the country. So that's not a problem.
I think we have a question from.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask that it seems like the technology is there, the processes are there, softwares are there. It's mostly the people and the management of the people to start using it.
We are already starting our training programs. I mean, we are training the construction people that never use BIM, but we are not training them about BIM. We train them about fundamental of information that they need to understand to support the construction teams on creating the BIM models. Because they have all the expertise like the QS, the engineers, the architects are using BIMs, but the management teams, or maybe the executive level that managing the project, we create an awareness program, not just awareness, but coaching them, or we don't mentoring, we coach them, and for them to understand about the drawing, but it's not about the drawing, but the information in the drawing. So then they can appreciate it, and then they can make sure that the construction team always following the process that already been spelled out in their contracts. It's what we did.
I think we have questions to Dr. Sola. Could you please share the screen? Okay, so we have one question for Mr. Harris. Great presentation. One, I'm curious to know if you believe our focus is best directed up to the executive level, down to the technical members, or across to the middle management. There is a chasm to cross in that BIM knowledge is harbored at the lower level, but project contracts and business spend are controlled at the top. Should our technical users become more managerial, or should our managers become more technical? Vaughn, maybe you need to unmute your mic first.
Right,
Okay.
so that's just thanks to Gavin. He's given me a chicken or the egg question. I think, you know, it's very important that the foundational need for the fundamentals, and as well as this accurate technical information and terminology, is absolutely critical for all challenges that we face across the built environment. Yet the challenge we faced with most countries is this different delivery method. And we're starting to see this computational BIM becoming a more prevalent or a more used word than BIM because of the data that's around it. And most management are only interested in the data and just expect that the technology will produce the data based on the skills of the technical people. And I think that the level of learning, that to answer the question, I think the level of learning that we're offering is underpinned by what I call a systematic or a prospective approach of the firm's functions. And they need to start maybe looking at considering a better, more of a competitive, collaborative approach to how they work with traditional project organizations versus advanced aspirations of project companies that use these digital design or modes of innovation, as you want to call them. I think we need to go back to our absolute basics. And I always like to say every single company, regardless of where they're based and how good they are, every company has a shelf life. And they will reach that expiration date based on the skills of the people that work for that organization. And just like that yogurt in your fridge, that resource will expire. And I think companies don't realize that it's the first to go are your rookies or your techie guys before management goes. And I think this whole reset button with COVID-19 has realized that it doesn't matter who you are and what skills you have. It all depends on how we go forward with this dilemma. And it's not just a dilemma. I think it's actually become a real exciting reset button for everybody to understand that companies are not as powerful as they think they are. So I'm not sure I'm answering Gavin's question, but I think it is absolutely critical that there are different levels of learning within every organization. But every organization requires a foundational need to understand the fundamentals of digital innovation before looking at the accurate technical information or terminology that's needed at more of a lower level. Does that answer? I hope that answers the question.
Thank you, Vaughn. So our next question is for Dr. Juliana. It is interesting to see more measuring metrics being proposed to watch the BIM adoption performance in the industry. However, resistance towards these changes will arise for sure. What can we do to mitigate the resistance?
Thank you for asking. Yes, there will be a resistance or challenges in order to implement or use this BIM, this model, migration path model in the industry. But what we can do is the involvement of relevant authorities. So if we can relate or if we can bring this model to the industry or relevant industry, so we can make the relevant industry can enforce the use of this BIM as a part of requirement in the contract. Let's say that the project implement BIM, and the contractor, for example, the contractor that want to involve for this project, they need to go through this model in order to measure, to evaluate, and to verify their BIM competency for this project. And another thing is to definitely to need to educate the industry, because that's why we need to have especially for our from the researcher perspective, we need to have a good linkage with the relevant authorities and also with the industry. We need to convince them why we need to use this kind of measurement of performance before we can implement or hire the right person in BIM project. I think for that one, is the responsibility of a researcher and also the industry as well to convince and educate relevant authorities that involved for the implementation of project.
Thank you, Doctor. Next question is for Mrs. Pasu. What is most challenges of IFC format for FM regarding information? For your data teams, are you finding there is a similar level of input from project contractors in population of project element data?
The challenge of EFC format is I'm not so used with FM softwares, but how the information is translated to them, and also if we want to change the information later on, then we, for example, if we have some kind of renovation or reconstruction project, we need original file formats also. The second question, population of project element. There's a different level of input depending on the requirements of the client. So client needs much more input from architecture and structural disciplines, and map is still less input needed. But as the requirements are quite young, I see the change with every new release. So I think they change it quite a bit to have more data, for example, the pieces that are more needed for facility management.
Thank you, Ms. Pasu. All right. Next question for Dr. Juliana. It is interesting to see more measuring matrices being proposed. I think this was the previous question, right? Okay. So next question for Mr. Harris and Ms. Pasu. What is your view on the readiness of people and technology to actually collaborate on BIM over online communication and overcoming the physical distances, like engaging experts from other countries and regions?
Of course, people are different. So there are all kinds of people also in Estonia, but I see the readiness is there. As I mentioned in the beginning of my presentation, Estonians are ready to take on new technologies, and we take great pride in our IT and virtual technologies. So it's not hard to take teams to the virtual offices and communicate through there. We give a training for example, when we start with a new team with new softwares, for example, using BIM Collab. So I'm quite happy with the teams I work with, and maybe it's because of our nationality. Estonians are northern people, like to keep to themselves quietly in the forest. So maybe it's from there.
What about you, Mr. Harris?
I think, yeah, there's a company called the Good Things Foundation, and they did some research that showed the social exclusion tied with the digital exclusion. And I think most people have always, if they're not forced to, have been digitally, you get digitally resistant people in general. And in an environment where there's social isolation, you tend to find people can either react positively or negatively. And I think most people in our jobs today find that the technology's become almost an obstacle because it's maybe sometimes the fear of the unknown. And this whole reset button of COVID-19 has forced us to break ourselves into isolation, as we are now. We're all pretty much working from home at this point in time. And I think there's merit to that as well. There's advantages to working in this remote environment as opposed to working behind the desks and being delegated tasks or having someone always look over your big shoulder. And I'm actually more in favor of this new way of working. I'm loving it. For the first time, I can monitor every single staff member right down to what they're doing and when they're working. My timing for operations is so much better. My communication is completely tracked and traced. I know exactly about every single communication that's being done. Now, that's not playing big policeman because they should be doing their jobs. Yet, we still work in an industry that is very traditional and often seen as a cash cow to many contractors. And I think this is clamping down on the way we access information and being able to communicate in almost in a real-time environment, regardless of your boundaries of geographical displacement. So I think we do talk about this word collaborative. I think it's very much of a 90s word. And I think we as this, whatever generation, when you want to put yourself into I generation or C, the coding generation, I think we need to start using a new word, and that's that connected phase. I think we need to become more connected digitally, and that those resistant people will be forced to move with us, regardless of their way of communicating. Because I think we're starting to see that online communication, regardless if it's project related or not, is becoming more valuable to people going forward in the future. That's, I guess, my answer.
Okay, next question for all the speakers. How can the client find the information that is needed for FM, and which stage should be collected? Maybe you can start with Ms. Pasu first.
I showed the example of Estonian government in public procurements, how they define information that is needed. So because of it's their projects, they ask from architects, engineers to just give this information. I don't know if other has better answer to how can you define true requirements, I'd say, but I don't know what's meant by this question.
Maybe from our experience on implementing this FM, actually for the last maybe 10 years ago, the information is not there. I mean, perhaps we need to rely on the information about what is inside the construction document. What is inside the specification that is spelled out is not meant for SM. It's only meant for the QS to check whether whatever that been agreed to be delivered according to the contract is supposed to be same documented and delivered accordingly. So there is those days when you want to derive this information for FM. There is none. There is no information for FM. But nowadays, because we are building out the requirement, we start to identify like what are the information needed for maintenances. So then they come up with the information related to the specifications towards to maintenance. So we did step by step, because it also related to our Malaysian contracts. Those days we don't have SM, we don't have facility management, we don't even have a contract, we don't even have a maintenance. What we did is only have defect liability periods. You construct the buildings and there is a 2 years defect liability periods. There is no operation maintenance support on that contract. We hand over the building to the clients will take care of the operation maintenance. So that's also the historical transforming the process. Due to the contract is not required for maintenance, there is no such information provided by the contractor to be used by the maintenance team. Because it's like transforming, like I build a building, I give to the clients. Later on, what client want to do is their problem. It's no longer contractor problem, or it's no longer designer problem. But times goes on, we improvise. In 2008, we decided that we need to maintain, we need to have facility management in our contracts. So these are the evolution of FM, the same time evolution of the BIM model in Malaysia. So I mean, this is the journey.
Yeah, I think I'm going to add to that conversation that I think sometimes too much emphasis is put on the fact that because it's digital that we're expecting FM teams to use it. There is this argument at the moment, why do I need a digital twin when I have a physical building?
Yeah.
And I have a team, and usually the owner operator is not the facilities management team. So I have the data to manage my building as an asset, yet the facilities management team must do their job on what I employed them to do. And again, it boils down to that whole thing about education. BIM education does not need to start with the client. I always like to tell people is that when you go to a doctor, you don't say, hey, doc, I know exactly what's wrong with me, but I'm still going to pay my consulting fees for you to write my prescription because I need to get my pills. You go to a doctor to find out what's wrong with you, and he's the professional. The same goes for the facilities management team. Many people wear this Fitbit watch or an iWatch to manage their steps and their heart rates and their sleeping patterns. That watch is the facilities management team to your asset, and making sure that all the data is collected and stored within that application or that app. So first responders might be able to use that information as they need it, but their information is different to someone else's. And this is, again, a chicken and egg situation. It all boils down to understanding education and the importance of what other people need this information for. And that is always something I don't think will be resolved overnight. It always goes against counterintuitively what we've been taught or do, what makes us better. And that's really a tough question.
Yeah.
I do agree with Mr. Sharon about this. How can the client define the information they need for FM? Basically, we need to refer back to the contract of the project, specification, and so on, because that's the book that we will refer from the beginning of the project until the completion of the project. And definitely, for this information, also must be also from the as-built documents. And for which state that should be collected about this information, basically, if we talk about maintenance or facilities management, we must know all aspects of the building, and definitely we need to start collect the information from the early phase of the project. That's why when we talk about BIM, it's all about the end product. So that's why we need to ensure, that's why we bring the FM person at the early phase of the project, so that this person could have the information from the early phase until the completion of the project. Not like the conventional project where the FM person will only come after the completion of the project. So that's all for my opinion.
Thank you to all speakers. So the next question is for Mr. Harris and Dr. Juliana. In your opinion, is industrial training alone sufficient for students to prepare themselves for the industry? And what kind of teaching strategies and approaches for BIM courses in university?
Well, I'd like to jump in and tell you that that's why we developed Exceptional BIM. It is a program designed exactly for that, where the courses that we look for start with allow the learners to develop the understanding of history, as we heard briefly in this webinar. It also looks at the entire digital transformation fit to industry purpose. We look at functional BIM design programming to learn on an international level. And everything we do allows the learner to understand the foundational need of the fundamentals, as well as the accurate technical information and terminology. And what's different about this whole Exceptional BIM learning program that we've developed is it's completely gamified. So you're actually earning badges while you're learning. And it's an infinite game, because we don't write the course content. It's provided us by professionals for professionals. We're now introducing this new 3-year level curriculum starting at school level, where we're teaching children, or should we say students and kids, as well as scholars, the importance of sustainability. And how do we work with classical and behavioral and contemporary management theories in their deployment in response to competitive as well as traditional triggers that we encounter on a day-to-day basis. So, I'm fully promoting, what we developed, and I didn't develop it as an individual. We went out to the world and we said, let's put a platform with everything and be the Google to BIM, and make it free where it can be free. But yet it's not all about the certification. It's about learning and keeping that grit, that enthusiasm that keeps you going, allows you to engage with other learners across the world, not through LinkedIn, because LinkedIn doesn't give you that certification, it gives you a course. And it's a whole different way of learning. And I think that's what the world needs to see now. We're not replacing a learning curriculum or trying to replace a particular study curriculum. We always encourage that. But learners have an opportunity now, for the first time ever, to look at the behavior versus the culture requirements for rolling out building information modeling across a project or an organization. And while they're learning, they get the opportunity to appreciate the scope as well as the fundamentals required to understand the software across the entire industry, with architectural, estimating, construction, planning, common data environment principles. We don't sell software. We sell skills, leadership skills. I've just written a book which will be available soon called BIM Rules of Engagement. And there's over 55 rules of engagement that allows people to understand how to engage with different disciplines.
That's great. Good to know that they have books for that.
Yeah, it's going to be an ebook, and it will be available on Exceptional BIM. So, that's what makes it exciting. It's interactive. It's not a book that you download. It's an interactive book.
Looking forward to have one copy on once it's been published. Dr. Ju, do you have anything? Yeah?
Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah, I think it's very difficult to talk about what kind of teaching strategies one needs to approach, because now with technology across the world, it's probably easier to monitor how much learning you've done versus who's stood in front of the classroom and giving you their opinion based on research or case studies. I want to hear it from the horse's mouth. And then I want to take that and apply lessons learned.
I agree with you. Because we are, I mean, for these last 3 months, we are conducting a lecture via Zoom. And we do the research activity and the project via the Zoom. And it's like a 7 weeks short semester, a research project for the strategic facility project management related to one building via Zoom. I think it's nowadays, the learning is much better. When the approach is much better, the delivery also much better, and then the communication between the students and also lecturer also good. It's like very close compared to that. Last time we have a whole class, we can't even chat with one of the students, for example, because we are focusing the whole class. But during this technology, I think they are changing the modes of the learning.
Okay.
You have anything to add?
For industrial training, I think that one depends on the university itself, because some university only allocates the duration for 10 weeks only for the student to be involved in the industry. Some university allocate about 5 to 6 months. I think it depends on the duration and also depends on the scope of work, also a company that they send a student to for the industry training. Because we have some issue as well, because some students from construction management, but they go for roadworks company. So there's a big contra and but difficult for the student to practice what they have learned, because we focus on construction management in building. So as a lecturer or in university, we need to ensure that duration is enough for that student, and also the scope of work and also the company is in line with our scope or syllabus. And then for teaching strategies for BIM, that's what we do currently for at UITM. Theory is not enough. First, before this, we revise the content. We bring forward the theory, the concept, the processes. Then we talk about, or we as introduced on the tools of technology. What we did now is we have, I give an example for our master program. We have a course, a project where the student needs to develop or propose a project, and they need to come out with a complete document, like a project proposal, consists of feasibility studies, design, costing, planning. And what we suggest for that project is students need to use the BIM concept for that project. So for that, we can see how the student really, how they understand the theory during classes, and also how they practice the understanding on the concept in the project, because that project will be evaluated by the industry people in BIM as well. So that's what we do now, and we currently also want to use that kind of project for undergraduate students, because for subjects related to BIM, for me, this is not it's not enough if we just focus on the concept and theory. We need to get the student to practice what they have learned.
I also want to add that I believe just college or university doesn't provide us the professionals that we need. Also, maybe one person can't have all the skills that are needed for the industry. So from my BIM management team, I can see the synergy that comes from different people with different skill sets, because a BIM professional needs very wide range of skills, like first of all, BIM software skills, then engineering software skills, and must know about construction, different requirements, BIM requirements. After that, there's leadership and people management. And so there are very different skills needed. I take my coordinators from zero level. They don't have to know almost anything about BIM. But I can see after 1-2 weeks they can already provide value for the company. Of course, they need quite a lot of support, but everybody brings something to the table. At the moment, I have 2 programmers, IT guys, who are doing BIM coordination. They have a very good overview of systems, so they bring the knowledge of IT knowledge to the table, and show us how agile workflows are implemented in IT sector that we can take also to the BIM world. So I believe that most of the BIM knowledge is learned through doing the work, not just university studies.
Allysha, sorry, I'm going to be rude. I have another webinar in 2 minutes, so
Yeah.
I have to say goodbyes, and thanks very much for everyone. Wonderful meeting you all, and I really appreciate what you guys have done. Please keep it up. Sharon, thanks, and I look forward to catching up with you guys again.
Thanks, Juan.
Thank you so much, Juan.
Thanks for your time, Juan.
Yes, thanks then, guys. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.
So yeah, that was our last question. So I think we've covered everything. So to all speakers, do you have anything else you wanted to cover before a wrap up?
Yeah, I think I'm good.
No? Okay. So thank you very much again for speaking in our webinar. To all the participants, thank you everyone for joining us tonight. We are very grateful for the time and effort you took to share your thoughts and experience with us. I believe we all can benefit from the knowledge. And we will always welcome you to our next discussion. Also, we would appreciate it if you can give us some feedback regarding this webinar session. You can fill in the survey through the email blast that we're going to send. We also have our YouTube channel. So this is where we are posting all of our webinar recordings. If you want to check that out, you can search on YouTube, Microcorp SDNDHD without spaces. So yeah, thank you again for joining us. Don't forget to join our next webinar, the last part of this 4-part webinar series next week, next Wednesday, 2nd of September, 2020. 8:30 until 10 to 10:30 p.m. We are going to focus on the same topic of information in BIM with different panels. We're going to have Madam Zaidato Ahmad Zubel, General Manager of the KLCC projects, Dr. Wallace Edapuma, Senior Lecturer from the Victoria University of Wellington, New Zealand, and Dr. Yasser Al-Mutiri, Head of Digital Management Department from Saudi Bin Laden Group. So we hope to see you next week, and good night. Bye, guys.
Bye. Thank you, Pasu.
Bye.
Thank you, Dr. Ju.
Thank you, Dr. Juliana. Thank you, Pasu.
for having me.
We'll see you next week. See if you'd like to join our event.
See
Bye.
you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.